Welcome back to Hopeful Moments 1. Fire. Today, we have two stories that will make you rethink the way we treat others. A guy labeled as awful just for following his girlfriend's instructions. A sister-in-law who constantly complains but never makes a change. Who's right, who's wrong? Let's dive into these dramatic situations right now. Are you ready to explore these jaw-dropping, hilarious scenarios with us? Let's go! Story 1. I refuse to cook in my own kitchen because it's disgusting. Am I overreacting? Have you ever walked into your own kitchen and felt like you just stepped onto the set of a new season of Man vs. Wild? Well, I have, except instead of trying to survive in a jungle or a desert, I'm battling an even harsher environment, the shared kitchen. Every time I open the kitchen door, it feels like I'm entering a long-forgotten archaeological site. The historical remains of last week's meals are still there, untouched, as if someone cooked and then simply erased cleaning up from their memory. On the table, I spot what seems to be fossilized instant noodles, so dried and hardened they could probably be displayed in a museum. And the sink? It's no longer a sink. It has evolved into a self-sustaining ecosystem, where bacteria might have advanced enough to draft their own Declaration of Independence. At this point, I seriously ask myself, am I living with humans or a new breed of highly adaptive organisms that have mastered the art of never doing dishes? If this were a scientific experiment on adapting to extreme environments, my roommate would definitely be the perfect case study. I, 25F, currently live with my boyfriend, 26M, and an absolute genius of laziness, 27M, a man with a revolutionary perspective on household chores. While normal people see dirty dishes as something to be washed, he sees them as historical artifacts. Dishes aren't just utensils, they're testaments to the past. The longer they sit, the more valuable they become archaeologically. Yep, you heard that right. My kitchen is no longer a kitchen, it has transformed into a museum, exhibiting artifacts from different culinary eras. In the sink, you might find a bowl with remnants of dried noodles from last week, a fork trapped under layers of fossilized sauce, and possibly even a spoon that has completely disappeared beneath a mysterious layer of foam. Every time I step into the kitchen, I feel like an esteemed archaeologist, about to uncover the secrets of an ancient lost civilization, one whose inhabitants firmly believed that washing dishes was an unnecessary luxury. I can't help but wonder, if I leave everything untouched for a few more months, would UNESCO recognize my kitchen as a World Heritage Site? At this point, calling it a kitchen is an understatement. It has officially leveled up into a wild, untamed wasteland, where cockroaches have evolved into Olympic sprinters, racing across the countertop littered with breadcrumbs. Meanwhile, bacteria from all corners of the world gather here for an international buffet, celebrating their feast on generations of leftover meals. The kitchen sink? It's no longer a place for washing dishes. It's a skyscraper of filth, piled so high that if I stand still long enough, I swear I can hear NASA trying to communicate with it via radio signals. Houston, we have a problem. We seem to have discovered a new satellite made entirely of dirty dishes. And the smell? Oh, it's an exquisite blend of despair, horror, and pure frustration. If there were a post-apocalyptic edition of luxury perfumes, I think my kitchen accidentally discovered the perfect formula, a hint of fermenting leftovers, a touch of roach-infused air, and a lingering scent of my defeated size. I've tried everything, from gentle reminders to meaningful stares, but his promises to clean vanish faster than boiling water in a pot, or worse, faster than my paycheck during a big sale. And so, day after day, I face a life-altering dilemma. Do I continue cooking in a kitchen that qualifies as the setting for a horror movie? Where dirty dishes pile up like a monument to forgotten meals? Or do I go on strike, abandon cooking altogether, and see who breaks first in the ultimate battle of who will wash the dishes first? This isn't just a daily inconvenience anymore. It has evolved into a full-fledged psychological warfare, a battle of patience and endurance between me and the ever-growing mess. Will I surrender? Or will my kitchen forever remain an archaeological wonder filled with the remains of countless meals? The answer is yet to be revealed. One fateful day, I decided to take a stand. With renewed determination, I stepped into the kitchen, ready to reclaim my right to cook. But before I could even reach for the pan, I was hit with an unexpected biological attack, a stench so strong, so potent, that I could practically hear the bacteria laughing at me. I inhaled it, a fatal mistake. My throat closed up, my eyes burned, my head spun. For a brief moment, I almost dialed 911, convinced I was experiencing a toxic gas leak inside my own home. If there was a hazmat team nearby, I would have begged them to quarantine the entire kitchen. And then, the realization hit me. The culprit was none other than the forgotten culinary artifacts scattered throughout the kitchen. A mystery pot, which might have once contained soup. A microwavable food container that had transformed into a mold laboratory. And, of course, the Everest of dirty dishes, radiating a symphony of decomposition. So, tell me. Am I being unreasonable for refusing to cook in this post-apocalyptic disaster zone? Or should I stand my ground and let my kitchen embrace its new role as an archaeological site? What would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I stepped back, contemplating my two options: either sacrifice my sense of smell and move forward or flee before my body suffered permanent contamination. In the end, I chose the only logical course of action. I turned and ran. With trembling hands, I summoned the courage to open the microwave, and immediately knew I had made a terrible mistake. Instead of leftover food or the usual stains, I discovered a miniature ecosystem so complete that even David Attenborough could make an entire documentary about it. The mold was no longer just a few scattered spots, it had spread like a miniature Amazon rainforest, with artistic swirls of green, white, and black decorating the interior. I swear, if I looked closer, I could see the fungal strands swaying in an imaginary breeze, as if they had adapted to microwave conditions and developed their own biological system. Could this be the first step toward a new civilization? If I touched it, would it react? I wondered if I should name the species before exterminating it. After all, not everyone gets the chance to discover a new life form right in their own kitchen. I reached for my phone, considering whether to call Discovery Channel or at least a microbiologist. But then, I quickly realized that the only thing to do at that moment was to shut the microwave door and pray. And that was the historic moment when I, a food enthusiast, officially declared a kitchen strike. With the determination of a leader launching a reform campaign, I solemnly announced to my boyfriend and roommate, I will not step foot in this battlefield again unless it is clean from top to bottom. My boyfriend nodded fervently, though I couldn't tell if it was out of agreement or sheer terror at the chaos before us. Either way, it seemed we were on the same side. But then, the villain of the story, my lazy genius roommate, smirked and shrugged challengingly. You're overreacting. Just ignore it. Ignore it. Ignore it. I wasn't sure if he was confusing our kitchen with a public landfill, but if I continued to ignore it, this place would soon qualify for an official hazardous zone certification from the World Health Organization, WHO. I surveyed the kitchen, sink overflowing with dishes, the floor sticky with unidentifiable food stains, and the microwave. I didn't even want to think about it. Was I the last sane person left in this house? No, I would not surrender. If this was a war, I would rather starve than bow to cockroaches and bacteria. Ignore it? Ignore an environmental disaster unfolding in my own home? I'd rather wear a VR headset than look at this mess. I had seen apocalyptic movies where people fought for survival in extreme conditions, floods, volcanic eruptions, zombie outbreaks. But no one ever told me I'd have to endure a post-apocalyptic kitchen in my own house. The sink had become an archaeological site, with each layer of unwashed dishes stacking like geological strata, telling the tragic story of forgotten meals. The kitchen floor was as slippery as a mini ice rink, thanks to a mysterious blend of grease and, possibly last week's ketchup? I had fought bravely, waited patiently for a miracle, but at this point, I officially waved the white flag. I had never given up before. I had survived brutal exams, crushing deadlines, even unfair scoldings from my boss, but this kitchen? I was out. If I survived this kitchen war without contracting a gastrointestinal infection, I deserved a Medal of Honor. After a week of my strict kitchen strike, my roommate finally showed signs of complete collapse. With no delicious home-cooked meals to enjoy for free, he wandered the kitchen like a lost soul, his gaze distant and filled with sorrow. I'm not exaggerating, I honestly believe that if someone had filmed him at that moment, it would have been a heartbreaking scene in a documentary about men who have lost their will to live. Every time he passed by, he let out a dramatic sigh, as if I had stolen the one thing that gave his life meaning. One evening, I caught him opening the fridge, staring at the cold, lifeless leftovers with the betrayed look of a man abandoned by fate. He shut the fridge, opened it again, then shut it once more, as if hoping that on the third try, a freshly cooked meal would magically appear. But unfortunately, magic didn't work in this kitchen. Eventually, his desperation led him to attempt cooking for himself. But when I saw the scorched rice and the grease-coated pans, I knew one thing for sure, my strike was working. And then, he fought back. "Oh, look who it is. Her Royal Highness. What's the matter? Too good for the kitchen now," he scoffed, arms crossed, leaning against the counter with a triumphant smirk, as if I had just abdicated my throne. "That's right. Royalty doesn't cook in a pigsty," I replied coolly, my tone as icy as if I had just declared war on a lifelong enemy. I issued my ultimatum: either he washed the dishes and cleaned up, or I would never cook again. No negotiations. No exceptions. He took exactly 0.2 seconds to consider it before shrugging and shaking his head. Of course. And so, the Cold War escalated. I clung to my store-bought meals like a warrior holding their last line of defense, my eyes burning with resolve as if heading into a life-or-death battle for my dignity. As for my boyfriend, he occasionally stepped into the kitchen, but not to support me, only to show off that he could cook too, and conveniently ignore the dirty dishes. Thus, the battlefield remained in ruins, and the war dragged on. Who would break first? Who would surrender in this brutal showdown? Stay tuned to find out. And then, after nearly a month of Cold War, the inevitable happened: my roommate surrendered. I still remember that glorious day. He walked into the kitchen with the expression of a man marching to the gallows, grabbed a sponge as if holding the tragic fate of his existence, and reluctantly began to clean. The plates in the sink had been abandoned for so long that they might have developed self-awareness, but he had no other choice. With every sigh, every slow scrub, he begrudgingly erased the remnants of battle, but not without throwing me a look of deep resentment. And so, the kitchen was restored to a usable state. Of course, I wasn't going to let this happen again. From that day on, I enforced the golden rule. Make a mess? Clean it up yourself. No exceptions. No negotiations. My boyfriend agreed immediately, since he wasn't fond of a filthy kitchen either. And my roommate? He nodded, but I swear I heard the sound of grinding teeth buried in his reluctant "yeah, got it." Now, I feel justified in refusing to cook in what used to be a post-apocalyptic battlefield. But what do you think? Was I overreacting, or was this a reasonable lesson? Have you ever experienced a roommate nightmare like this? Share your stories in the comments below. Story 2. I said I wouldn't babysit for my sister. Am I the villain? Have you ever felt like you were suddenly cast as the villain in a family drama? Well, here I am, the #1 antagonist, all because I refused to be a free babysitter. Everything happened so fast that I barely had time to process it. 1 second, I was the sweet, kind little sister. The next second, when I said, "I don't think I can," boom, dramatic music played, the atmosphere dropped to sub-zero, and my sister gave me a look so cold it could have belonged to a palace drama villain. If there had been a slow-motion effect, I swear I would have seen a snowstorm blowing between us. Let me clarify, I don't hate kids. I simply don't have the time, the experience, or the desire to be pushed into a role I can't handle. But no, according to my sister, that made me a heartless, cold-blooded monster who cruelly refused to help the family. And just like that, I was shoved from a harmless side character in her story straight into the role of the ultimate antagonist. I might as well be blacklisted from family gatherings, my name whispered with disdain at reunions. But let's be real, do I really deserve the terrible person label just because I want to keep some time for myself? Or is this all just a ridiculous overreaction? What do you think? Drop a comment below. As a 28-year-old independent woman, free and, I confidently say, doing pretty well, I've always thought I had built a dream life. I have a stable job, a bank account that never hits the danger zone, and, best of all, I don't have to deal with diapers or chase a screaming toddler through the supermarket. Each day passes peacefully. I go to work, enjoy my morning coffee without worrying about tiny hands grabbing my cup, watch Netflix without fighting over the remote, and even sleeping on weekends without anyone yelling my name. A life I bet many people would dream of. But then, I was too naive. I thought I could live in peace forever, until that life-altering moment arrived, throwing me into a crisis I never saw coming. My freedom was under threat, my afternoon naps in jeopardy, and one haunting question loomed over me. Can you help babysit? Yep. My life had officially turned a new page, a chapter filled with drama, exhaustion, and intense mental battles. Want to know what happened next? Keep reading. As a 28-year-old independent woman who has never been forced to change a diaper, I always thought life was pretty great. I worked, enjoyed peaceful morning coffees, watched movies without fighting for the remote, and, most importantly, never had to chase a screaming child through a supermarket. But then, I was too naive. My sister, 32 years old, mother of two, an expert at hiring unpaid labor, had just returned to work after maternity leave. I thought, okay, congrats to her. But little did I know, a storm was coming. One fine day, as I was enjoying what I now realize was my last moment of peace, my phone rang. My sister called, speaking in the tone of a recruiter, but without a salary, a contract, or any paid leave. You're free all the time, so why not help me with the kids? At that moment, I felt like I had just received a scam job offer, where the workload is enormous, but the salary equals zero, benefits equals non-existent, and working hours equals unlimited. I blinked 3 times, trying to figure out if she was joking or if she truly believed my full-time job was just eating, sleeping, and scrolling through social media. Could I escape? Stay tuned. I froze. Wait a second. Since when am I free all the time? A reality check flashed through my mind. Heavy checkmark full-time job, check. Heavy checkmark monthly bills as long as a grocery receipt, check. Heavy checkmark zero childcare superpowers, check. And yet, my sister somehow thought I had the time and skills to be a free babysitter. I don't even know how to hold a newborn properly. Honestly, whenever I see someone carrying a baby, I always wonder, how do they keep that tiny head balanced without turning it into a live-action bowling ball? I can't shake the feeling that if I were to hold a baby, one small mistake and it would roll right out of my hands like a slippery watermelon in the supermarket. I started picturing the nightmare scenario, me holding a newborn, as tense as if I were defusing a ticking time bomb, knowing that the slightest wrong move could trigger the ultimate alarm, deafening wails. And so, the nightmare officially began, or would I escape in time? Stay tuned. I took a deep breath. A really deep one. The kind that made me feel like I was training for a free diving competition. I had to stay calm like a rational adult, not like a kid being forced to eat boiled broccoli. Maybe you should hire a babysitter or send them to daycare, I said, trying to keep my voice as gentle as a family therapist on TV. But deep down, I knew, this was just the opening act of a long battle. The air grew heavy, like the sky before a thunderstorm. I could almost hear the distant drums of war, a sure sign that a family conflict was about to erupt. Would I stand my ground, or would I be dragged into a whirlwind of guilt trips, emotional manipulation, and disapproving looks from my mom and sister? Stay tuned for the next episode. The moment I said, no, an emotional explosion on par with a volcanic eruption detonated in front of me. My sister lost it, full meltdown mode, unstoppable. You're selfish. Ungrateful. I've helped you so many times, and now you can't even do this one small thing, look after 2 little kids for a bit? Within seconds, I had officially been promoted from the sweet younger sister to the #1 villain of the family. If this were a TV drama, I'd have been labeled the cold-hearted, ruthless antagonist. It felt like I had refused to donate bone marrow, not just declined to babysit. The tension was so thick I could almost hear a dramatic soundtrack playing in my head. I swallowed hard. Run or fight? Back down or stand firm? These questions spun through my mind like a survival quiz. And I knew this was only the beginning of an intense family showdown. Wait a minute. A small matter? Taking care of a 6-month-old baby, a ticking time bomb that can cry for no reason at any moment, and a 3-year-old, a destruction expert with boundless energy, is what you call a small matter? Sorry, but I'd rather run a marathon through the desert without water or climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. At least those things wouldn't scream at me all day and demand food every 3 hours. I admit, in the past, she has helped me a few times. For instance, when I first moved to the city, she let me stay in a room at her house. But let's be real, sis. A room does not wail at 3 a.m. A room does not scatter toys across the floor like the aftermath of an apocalypse. A room does not stink of old yogurt because someone forgot to drink it and shoved it under the sofa. So please, don't compare giving me a place to stay with babysitting two high-energy, never-stopping creatures, okay? I seriously don't think these two things belong on the same value scale. I take a deep breath, trying my best to stay calm, like I'm about to negotiate with a general demanding the impossible. I gently but firmly say, "Sis, taking care of a baby and a 3-year-old is no joke. It's like playing a survival game on the hardest difficulty, except there's no pause button and no reward at the end. First, I have a full-time job. Second, I have never changed a diaper in my life. I don't know how to stop a kid from crying, and most importantly, do you know that I once burned instant noodles while cooking?" I add, emphasizing my point. Do you really want to entrust two small human beings to someone who can cause a kitchen disaster with just a packet of noodles? I thought this argument would make her reconsider, but she just looks at me as if I just refused to save the world. But it seems like my words are nothing more than echoes in a cave, spoken, yet unheard. My sister keeps going, completely ignoring my perfectly reasonable argument as if I'm submitting a vacation request and she's the boss denying it. I sit there, staring blankly at the scene before me, wondering if I had accidentally walked into a reality show about family conflicts. On one side, my sister, passionately delivering a speech like a lawyer in a high-stakes courtroom drama. On the other side, me, sitting silently like an innocent defendant being accused of the gravest crime, refusing to be a free babysitter. I glance around, half expecting a TV host to pop out of nowhere, raise a microphone, and say, "Welcome to the latest episode of Family Arguments, who's the villain?" But no. No cameras, no audience. Just me, my sister, and a tension so thick it could explode at any moment. The family pressure hits hard. A few days later, just as I'm settling into a rare moment of peace, my phone rings. I look at the screen and see Mom's name. Immediately, a bad feeling runs down my spine like a cold breeze in the middle of summer. I swallow hard, hesitating for a few seconds before answering. Part of me wants to ignore it, but I know that if I don't pick up, she'll call back 17 times with texts like, "Where are you? Call me back immediately." As soon as I put the phone to my ear, I don't even get a chance to say hello before Mom's authoritative voice booms through. Family is about helping each other. You should help your sister. Boom. A critical hit. I close my eyes, wondering why everyone is acting like I'm the villain in a tragic family drama. This is no longer a normal conversation, this is now an emotional courtroom, where I am being tried for the crime of not sacrificing for family. I sigh, knowing that the real psychological battle is just beginning. Aha! So my sister has summoned reinforcements, Mom. A predictable move, but I'm no rookie when it comes to family mind games. I take a deep breath, steadying my voice like a lawyer about to cross-examine a witness. Then why don't you help her, Mom? I can almost picture Mom on the other end, blinking in surprise like she was just hit with $1 million question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But she quickly regains her composure and dodges skillfully. I'm too old. I can't keep up with the kids anymore. Oh, so she's too old to babysit but sharp enough to orchestrate a whole campaign to pressure me into doing it? Interesting. I can practically hear an invisible trophy being handed to her for flawless logic. I lean back in my chair, blinking a few times, and wonder. Is my family secretly running on an unspoken rule called pass responsibilities to the youngest? And why was I never notified? Oh, how fascinating. So, according to my mom's logic, I, a person who has never changed a diaper, never soothed a crying baby, am somehow more capable of handling two hyperactive kids than someone who raised two fully grown adults. Sorry, but I'm not a superhero, nor am I a contestant on a survival show called Conquering Toddlers, Survive or Perish. If even Mom, a seasoned parent, finds this task too much, why should I willingly throw myself into this battlefield? At this point, I'm more convinced than ever that I'm not in the wrong. I'm not lazy. I'm not irresponsible. I'm just protecting my sanity. But I have a feeling this battle isn't over yet. The fallout. And so, my sister froze me out of her life like I had committed some unspeakable crime. Weeks went by, no texts, no calls. Absolute silence, as if I had been erased from the family tree. If this were a TV drama, I can totally picture her standing under the pouring rain, eyes filled with sorrow, whispering to the horizon. From now on, we are no longer sisters. Somewhere in the background, a melancholic soundtrack plays, the streetlights flicker, and me, the villain of the story, stand there, bewildered, as if I had just accidentally shattered the sacred bowl of family unity. I can't help but wonder, am I really that terrible? Or is this just family drama on steroids? At this rate, I half expect to see my name in the newspaper tomorrow. Heartless woman refuses to babysit, entire family outraged. All this, just because I didn't want to be a free babysitter. Somehow, I've become the villain of my own story. Is there a chance for me to redeem myself, or am I permanently blacklisted from family gatherings? Stay tuned for the next episode of Dramatic Family Showdowns. The final blow. After weeks of Cold War, I finally decide to reach out and make peace. And then, her reply lands like a glacier from Antarctica. Don't expect me to ever do you any favors in the future. Ah, let me see. Have I ever asked her for anything before? Or is this just some royal decree, like, from this day forth, you are banished from my kingdom forever? At that moment, I don't know whether to be sad about being exiled or laugh at how over the top this has become. I didn't refuse out of selfishness. I refused because I genuinely couldn't handle it. But in her narrative, I have officially been placed on the villain list, public enemy number 1. All I'm missing now is a black cape and an evil villain monologue. You shall receive no help from me. For I am the family betrayer. The real lesson. After all this, I've learned one crucial thing: sometimes, saying no is necessary, even to family. Not because you're selfish, but because you have the right to set boundaries and protect your time and energy. Because in the end, true family love isn't about obligations. It's about mutual understanding and respect.